caller.
Thank you.
Aisha Ho in the building.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Hi.
Welcome to the YouTube space.
Thank you for having me.
So, before you were coming in, we heard a little about you. You do great writing, musician. Let's talk a little bit about how do you have so many different skills?
Okay, so basically, I was in prison. And when I was in prison, I needed to pass the time. So when I walked into prison, I saw everybody reading these books, these urban books. And I was like, what is this? I'd never read an urban book in my life. So they were reading these books by Wahida Clark, Thugs and the Women Who Loved Them, etc. So I picked up the book, and when I read about the author, it says she did 10 years in the feds and became a New York Times bestseller. And I'm like, oh, wow, so I could do this. And that was really my inspiration to write.
That's. And what was the book about?
It was an urban book about a girl who went from just being, a young teenage girl living a regular life in a poor area and grew up to meet a guy and became like one of the biggest drug distributors like in the world. It was dope.
And your writing for music came out of there too, or you were
No,
always
no.
into the music?
I was always into music. My father used to record with Public Enemy,
Nice.
Terminator X, Chuck D. So I grew up doing music, especially hearing my father record. So I had grown up in the music world and the hustling world, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I was exposed to that from early. So I've been doing music since I was about 6.
And how would you say you have evolved now at this moment from, let's say, before prison?
Oh, wow. Like, I'm definitely now, more in tune to what's going on, like, in the country, as far as mass incarceration.
Nice.
I now have a cause, I speak about it regularly. I go to juvenile detention centers. I go to high schools. Anywhere I can go to let people know about this mass incarceration struggle. I'm doing it through the music. I'm doing it through my books. I'm doing it through, speaking. Just whatever I can do. It's a epidemic. They're locking people up of color and giving them triple the time that they give non-people of color. So it's important for me to get that out there.
And what triggered that motive and that inspiration for you to go out there and dedicate your time? Would you say?
Just seeing the struggle. Like when I got sentenced, like I had a business, and like I always been an entrepreneur. I always was into just making my own way, making my own dollar. So I had laundry service. I had my own little paper route I created. I had my own little school, like where I was teaching people the skill set that I had. And then I finally got into trading commodities, gold, silver, diamond, things of that nature. And I started off as a little company, and it grew. I ended up making $1 million a month in this business. And I was very young. I was like 24. And then I had a situation where a client came to me and said, listen, I can't wait for your whole process. I need it now. So make a long story short, I ended up changing up some documents to make him qualify for whatever it is he was doing.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up getting a Fed case.
Okay.
But everybody said, you'll get a year probation. They gave me 10 and a half years. So, it was a crazy situation. Never been in trouble in my life. And here I am, a young girl with 10 and a half years. I didn't know. It felt like I was going to be in forever. So while I was there, I was like, I got to survive. I got to figure out how to, make the best of this. And that's what I did. And that's when I got better into my music. I got more into writing the books. And I came out and, I had a lot of celebrities like, oh, we saw your story. We think it was unfair. We want to help you. So that's the journey I'm on right now.
So you think they use you as an example?
Oh, that's a fact. They definitely did. I felt like had I been selling drugs or had I been doing maybe credit card fraud or something that they felt was more common, I probably would have got more of a slap on the wrist, on the wrist. And the fact that I was doing something that was creating such a dent in their game, that trading game is like something that we're really not a part of. So here I come with my bright ideas, allowing people who typically did not have access to that kind of money or that business, I'm giving them opportunity, and I kind of cut the line, and they weren't feeling that. So I paid the price for that in a big way.
And mass incarceration, and incarcerating people, and you saying you giving them extra time, extra years, and targeting them. What kind of examples, or like did you see like with other inmates, like that
Oh
you
man.
could share with us as far as why there is a mass incarceration and why is it happening?
Well, it's happening because of money. You know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of money that's spent on law enforcement to lock people up, and they have to recoup that money some way.
Right.
So what happens is, you know, different agencies ask for certain amounts of money because of this and whatever it is that they're doing, and the more people they lock up, see, we need another $3 billion. We need another 50 billion over here. Look at the problem. So they have to feed the problem in order to show that it's necessary as far as the money goes.
Right.
There's so much money made in prison. Just commissary alone. I read a report that in the federal system, like federal prison, it was 2016. They made $250 million just off commissary. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And commissary is owned, a lot of the products there, Keefe, that's owned by the Bushes. It's owned by Bob Barker. These are some big names.
Right.
And these are people who have, you know, direct interest in locking people up. If I'm creating products that are only sold to prison, well, y'all got to keep that prison system going,
Right.
so that we can sell these products. You know, this cheaper labor. It's just a whole system that's based off modern day slavery.
Even the system as far as being like private jails.
Oh,
which
that is the worst of the worst.
And the more inmates you have, I guess the more shares you could share in your. It goes. It's a really deep. Like you say, it's a really deep.
It's
topic.
traded. Corrections Corporation of America,
Right.
CCA. They are a publicly traded company, and their stock is directly impacted by the prison population. So when you have people invested in this company, they have to make laws that make it easy to lock people up. So, for example, and what makes it even worse is you have judges and prosecutors and people who are in law enforcement who own this stock.
Right.
So I have more incentive to go out and harass you and lock you up because that's going to increase the numbers that I invested in. You know
Right.
what I mean? It's crazy. I think that information should be public information. We should know who has stock in companies like CCA
Right.
and GO and these companies that prey on people. You know, there's all kinds of different things you can do, reform programs. I've seen people have one drug exchange. The cops say nothing. You could stop that person and change their life, locking them up that one time. But because it's going to be a short time, they let it go. I met a woman who they let her sell drugs for 10 years till they were able to charge her with kilos.
Right.
And she was nothing more than a hand-to-hand, a user who could have had a life-changing experience going to prison for 3 months or whatever, being clean. But they didn't give her that opportunity. They waited and waited and waited and then hit her, boom, she got 20 years because they said that she was a major drug dealer. I mean, it's messed up.
They
you know?
feed the fish before they catch the biggest fish.
Absolutely.
What other topics would you say that you're really passionate about as far as like things we gotta like figure out and chase apart from the prison system?
Entrepreneurship. You know, one of the problems I notice in prison is that people chase that American dream. They chase that money. You know, and a lot of times certain things seem impossible unless you take a shortcut.
Right.
So they don't really educate, you know, especially in my community, about being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, things that you can do to make a lot of money that don't require you to break the law. And had I been trained different, you know, some of the things that I've done, I may have not done them. I was never really exposed to that stuff. My father sold drugs. He was in the street, you know, so I saw him making a lot of money, hustling, and I wanted to make a lot of money too. But it was just like, how have I got to get it? I'm going to get it. Nobody really sits people down and says, you want to run a business, this is how you do it.
Right.
Not just the structure of the business, but the morals and the things you do and you shouldn't do.
Right.
We don't really have access to that. So I feel like that is something that, especially in urban communities, they need to talk more about entrepreneurship, you know, because unless you're exposed to it, you really don't know. And I think that would change the prison numbers, because people in prison are mostly there for money. If they had another way that they can make money in large amounts, there's some things that they may not do.
And when you see little kids, you can always also tell like who's gonna be an entrepreneur, right? You selling a little candy or bubble gum, you're like, that kid has something.
Mm-hmm.
And even exchanging and being an entrepreneur is part of our like how we evolved
Mm-hmm.
as trading. I was just talking about the whole trading and how e-commerce is
Right,
growing, which
right.
is like the future now. What about your parents? Like, what did they teach you that you can recollect from them?
Like, so my mom was in the beginning like a stay-at-home mom. My parents were teenage parents.
Yeah.
So my father was, he came from Jamaica at a young age, and he was into his music and he was into making his money in the street. So I witnessed that, and I have memories of like, Daddy, can I have $5 to go to the store? And he's going through hundreds, and he's going through fifties, and he's
Nice.
going through 20, and I'm waiting for him to get to this $5 bill, and I'm like, wow, you have all of this money. That impacts a kid, and I never saw him go to work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm learning, not from what you tell me, but from what I'm seeing,
Right.
that this is not a paycheck. All my friends' parents that are getting these paychecks, this is not a paycheck. This is big money,
Right.
So I was exposed to that, and it made me want to live a life where I had access to big money.
Nice.
But they did give me morals and principles. And that doesn't always jive with the way this country does stuff. So even though I did what I did, in my mind, I'm helping people. You would never qualify for this if I don't do this for you. You'd never qualify.
Right.
You could come with $1 million, and this white guy could come with $1 million, but he has 500 million to back it to back him. You may have 3, but the minimum requirements to trade are 500 million.
Right.
You'll never have that. So that triangle gets smaller and smaller as you get closer and closer to the top, and we just get pushed further and further out. So what I was doing, I felt like, it was kind of a little bit of a rebellious act, but I made a lot of people a lot of money. I made a lot of millionaires, by giving them that opportunity. So, those 10 years, I don't want to say it was worth it, but there was some things about it that make me definitely not regret it.
So at the moment, what are you working on that you can share with us?
So right now I'm working on my music.
Nice.
I've always been passionate about music. I've been rapping since I was a kid, rap and reggae. My father's Jamaican, so I had that Caribbean,
Nice.
twist. And writing my books. I also started a credit repair company. And I started doing that just as favors for people who were in my position. I'm coming home with nothing. I went from having all of this
Yeah.
to having nothing. And I'm like, what am I going to do to get a lump sum, to rebuild? And I'm like, credit. So I was able to open up my spa and different things based on credit.
Nice.
And a friend of mine who believed in me and wanted to help me. So other people coming home, they're like, Aisha, you're making it look so easy. Can you help me? I'm like, let me look at your credit. And I just started looking at credit of people who were just coming home and people who had been home that were struggling. And I was able to get some things that just were negative off. You're gone. You're in prison. You can't pay your bills. So I was able to help clear off some of that stuff. And then it just grew from there. Well, can you help my cousin, or can you help my mom? And then I'm like, you know what? Let me just start a company. And I train people. So people who come to me like, I need to make some money. I show them the process. I'm not stingy with it. There's hundreds of millions of people in America. Everybody has a social and
Right.
might need credit repair. So I spread love that way. So everybody eats, and it just grew into something. I'm like, let me just turn this into a full-fledged company. So I do credit repair.